Andrew, can you quickly summarize Dune Part 2 for us?
Okay. Dune Part 2 takes place where Dune Part 1 left off on the planet of Arrakis. The Harkonnens have taken over the capital of Arcan, and they are attempting to rid the world of the Fremen, the home species of Arrakis. Paul, our main character, is living amongst the Fremen with his mother, Lady Jessica, and they are attempting to insert themselves into the society of the Fremen so that they can build up an army to take revenge for Leto Atreides' death in the first film at the hands of the Harkonnen.
So I've came up with 5 statements that I want to see if you guys think are an overreaction or if it's spot on. Okay? First one. We're barely into March, but Dune 2 is going to be the best movie of the year. Overreaction or spot on? So Andrew, for acting, out of 10 points, what did you give it?
I gave it a 10.
Oh my God! Oh no! No, you did.
I can't.
No, you did. I don't think you've ever given a 10 in this category before.
For acting?
I can't think of a movie on top of my head.
Maybe
maybe
Brokeback Mountain.
That's crazy. 10?
What?
Okay,
What?
explain.
What?
Welcome to Backseat Directing.
Where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew.
and Arron, with Dan.
We post new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on this episode, we're talking about Dune Part 2.
3, 2, 1, action.
Bum, 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 bum. Welcome.
I am Paul Badip Atreides, Duke of Arrakis. May thy knife chip and shatter.
It's finally here.
I did not expect this much excitement. I thought you guys didn't like it.
So that's the thing. We didn't really like Part 1.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about Part 1. But for those of you who are watching, joining in the show, Dan, thanks for joining us. Dan was on our episode where we talked about, or we did a CGI artist reacts to a bunch of different scenes from movies. Dan is a CGI artist local to Tampa, and he loves the Dune series. So we invited him onto the show to help us with this movie review. I'm very excited to dive into this. This is going to be a good conversation.
It was such an awesome theater experience, and we normally don't, I feel like, wait this long after seeing a movie because we saw it on, Saturday? Mm-hmm. So we normally
it's Wednesday
get
now.
in the studio a little bit sooner, so I've had some more time to bake on this movie than most of the times that we shoot, and I've liked it probably more and more since and I already liked it when I saw it. But as our guest, Dan, let me ask you, what did you think generally of Dune Part 2?
Loved it. It's just the best. I was floored by how much I enjoyed it. I saw it on a Thursday night, last Thursday.
You saw it late too, right?
As soon as you could.
10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
at an iMax, and the place was packed.
So you weren't out until way past midnight.
I got home at like 2:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
But that's
awesome.
That's the first thing I'd say to anybody listening to this. If you clicked on this to find out if you should watch Dune Part 2, first of all, absolutely.
Yes.
Second of all, please try to see it in Dolby Digital, IMAX, 4DX, some kind of enhanced screening experience, because really, if you're not seeing it on the film that they shot it for, you're missing up to 40% of the image.
Oh, yeah.
And they framed it with that in mind. So the point that's supposed to draw your eye is framed for that bigger screen. So it can really alter your viewing experience, especially for the first time you see it. Please see it in enhanced viewing.
Also, we watched it in Dolby, which awesome.
Yeah, we watched it in Dobby.
Yeah. But yeah, Hans Zimmer crushed it.
Oh my gosh, the sound was so
The
good.
sound design really stood out to me. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but I saw
okay.
the IMAX, the sound system that we had. It had subwoofers under the floor, so
cool.
and it lent itself to the storytelling in so many ways. Like the director used it to convey an idea, because you're jumping into an entire universe. A lot of people don't know a lot about the Dune universe, so he used sound design to help you to understand what was happening around you in a way that I don't think I ever seen somebody use sound design before in a movie to that effect. Like, I really enjoyed how much I felt like I was in the world because of it. It was,
When the ground was quaking from the thumpers, it felt like the ground was quaking in your theater. Like you really are enveloped in the movie when you watch it in enhanced viewing. And like obviously, like check our amount of subscribers. We're not yet being paid to support these enhanced viewing experiences, but it is just such a different level when you watch it that way. And I'm gonna go back and watch it again. Absolutely, I tried to go and see it again today.
Did you?
Yeah, but it didn't
you
work,
weren't able to make it?
with Sierra's work schedule.
Fair enough. Okay, to start this episode, I want to go into a new segment that's going to be called Overreaction or Spot On. So there's been a lot of talk about this film being freaking phenomenal. And then we all went and saw it. Can confirm. So I've came up with 5 statements that I want to see if you guys think are an overreaction or if it's spot on. Okay? First one. We're barely into March, but Dune 2 is going to be the best movie of the year. Overreaction or spot on?
I'm trying to think of the others that are coming out.
I'm prepared to say spot on with the qualifier that a more apt explanation for me would be it looks like it's going to be the best movie of the year. I have a hard time imagining another movie providing as grand of a viewing experience, even if there's a movie that I potentially like more. This movie is just so grand in scope, such a huge cast, amazing special effects. Like it feels like truly an epic in the true use of the word, an epic tale.
Yeah.
You know, it's larger than life. And so I have a hard time imagining something besting it. I feel like it could get nominated for Best Picture next year when the Oscars comes around. I don't think it's insane to say these things. It's hard for some people to imagine because it's March.
Yeah,
but
it's so early.
It could very well be the best movie of the year.
Dan, overreaction or spot on?
He convinced me it's spot on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. All right. Moving into the next statement. In 5 to 10 years, Dune will be the most popular sci-fi story.
Say overreaction.
Yeah.
Overreaction? Okay.
I think that this movie really lines up with like filmmakers and casual audiences in a really good way. I don't think like it's going to overpower Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars just has such a legacy.
Yeah. When you compare Star Wars and Star Trek to Dune and even Lord of the Rings and stuff, they just have such massive followings. Dune is as good of a universe as all of them, and I think, but it just doesn't have as much of as much inertia as those larger franchises.
Doesn't have as much source material, right? I mean, like there's 2 Dune books, I believe.
I think there's like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought it was Dune and Dune Messiah. I'm not.
No. There's more.
But still, when it comes to Star Wars, there is so many comics, and then there's graphic novels. Like there is so much material in the Star Wars world now, like 50 years later since it came out. There's such a wealth of written stories, video games, TV shows. It would take a long time for Dune to catch up in that aspect.
And going on what you just said, Andrew, I think it's a lot to do with it's a household name, Star Wars. Everyone knows, oh, that's that guy, Darth Vader, Luke, I am your father. They can quote that, whereas Dune doesn't have that kind of household name kind of thing.
You're telling me everybody is not at home right now saying, I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis.
If you ask them what a Jedi is, they would know. If you ask them what a Bene Gesserit is, they don't know.
No one, yeah. Even people who have seen Dune and Dune Part 2 still might not know what a Bene Gesserit is.
Saying that, yeah. Okay. Statement 3. Denis Villeneuve has the best 7-movie run in director's history. Prisoners, Enemy, Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, Dune, and Dune Part 2.
Overreact, absolutely.
Yeah. We talk about Christopher Nolan.
That honor belongs to my boy Christopher Nolan. Dude, 3 Batman movies, Inception, Interstellar, like Dunkirk, he popped off.
Yeah.
He went way too hard in that era. I think Prestige was the movie that preceded Batman Begins, and that's 7 right there. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Like he was.
You have Dunkirk and Tenet in there too, which for audience are...
I don't think Tenet makes it. And Dunkirk is like Oscar-winning movie.
What do you mean makes it?
Because if you start at Prestige, right? Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Inception, and then The Dark Knight Rises, and then Interstellar, Dunkirk. So
Okay.
that's 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tenet's probably one of the more divisive ones.
Okay. Kind of still like talking on this subject. Do you think it's comparable? Is he
Oh, absolutely.
like where does he sit? Like he's got to be one of the best directors
Oh, yeah.
currently working, right?
Oh yeah.
It's phenomenal.
He's very enjoyable to watch.
Dude, and what I love too is I feel like he's humble as a person too, because I saw this interview where he was talking about his conversations with Florence Pugh, and he was saying she plays Princess Irulan in Dune Part 2, and he was telling her, oh, like I'm sorry, I understand if you have to pass on it. It's not that big of a role in this movie, but I promise it will be a much larger role in the third film. And she was like, oh no, it's okay. I just really want to work with you and be on set for this grand movie. And dude, for him to like take himself to that thought process, like he could be a person that sits up in his throne and is like, she's lucky to work with me.
Yeah.
But he recognizes Florence Pugh's talent and her star power,
Right.
and was like, I understand that this could be an appealing aspect of this role to you. Like, I just feel like that was humble of him to do. He
Yeah.
didn't have to say that. And I'm really glad that they have that working relationship that they do. I respect him a lot, not only for his work, but for that like statement right there.
Yeah, he has a few movies that are in my top 20 favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I mean, after doing Blade Runner 2049, Arrival, and Dune Part 1, and Prisoners, like,
He's cooking. He's cooking.
Yeah, people want to work with him.
Yeah.
Like, he could have a big head, so...
Okay, statement 4. Greig Fraser is the best cinematographer right now. Overreaction or spot on?
You guys are going to get a feel throughout this episode how I feel about this question. This is a spot motherfucking on.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm not familiar enough with his work.
So he also did the Batman, the poster behind there, and then Dune Part 1, obviously.
Rogue One, Mandalorian.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
There's other.
I agree.
There's plenty of other great, talented cinematographers, but he's like, dude, he's fire. Like
He's got style.
This is his Michael Jordan with the Bulls era right now.
Yeah.
If he's able to top this, that wouldn't even make sense.
Yeah. Roger Deakins, I think, just has a longer career. But right now, Greig Fraser's cooking.
yeah,
He's got some masterpieces out there.
I was thinking about this today in the shower. Keep your mind. Hey, no dirty thoughts, Arron. And
No dirty thoughts in a clean shower.
and I mean, Wally Pfister, he used to be Nolan's cinematographer. He does some great work. He works in my favorite movie of all time. Hoyt van Hoytema does amazing work. I mean, there's plenty of great talented cinematographers.
Absolutely.
But dude, Greig Fraser, I think, really set himself apart with this
He was
movie.
part of the creator.
Oh yeah.
I think he's set himself on a different level.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think this is spot on too. Where are you sitting?
I agree.
Okay.
The movies you mentioned, the cinematography
Yeah.
always stood out to me in every yeah.
But Hoyt van Hoytema did Interstellar. I mean, it's insane. It's there are other great people.
Yeah, absolutely. By saying someone's the best right now is
Yeah.
not trashing anyone
Yeah.
else by any means. It's just praising that
He
person.
just is the best
yeah,
right now.
yeah. Okay, last one, and I think this will segue us into the rest of the conversation very nicely. Dune Part 2 will be the highest grossing movie of 2024. Overreaction or spot on?
I want to say spot on for my box office team, but I'm going to say overreaction.
Okay. I'm surprised you said that.
The timing of the movies early in the year as opposed to later when the summer blockbusters are those are traditionally the biggest grossing.
And I think that they're poised in a good spot on one end because of that, because there's not a lot to compete with it right now. There's not as many big movies. But I do think when we get into the heat of summer, people are going to be thirsting to go to the movies, and they're gonna drink, because there's going to be Deadpool 3. I think Deadpool 3 is a high contender for highest grossing movie this year. There's going to be Despicable Me 4. There's going to be Inside Out 2. So it's going to be just
Kung Fu Panda. Those have done well. Maybe not the highest, but there's competition.
Kung Fu Panda comes out this weekend.
Yeah. There's competition.
Yeah.
So overreaction?
It comes out this weekend?
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda, yeah.
Overreaction, yeah. I would say, given the timing mostly on my end.
All right. So let's go into the start of our movie review. Andrew, can you quickly summarize Dune Part 2 for us?
Okay. Dune Part 2 takes place where Dune Part 1 left off on the planet of Arrakis. The Harkonnens have taken over the capital of Arron, and they are attempting to rid the world of the Fremen, the home species of Arrakis. Paul, our main character, is living amongst the Fremen with his mother, Lady Jessica, and they are attempting to insert themselves into the society of the Fremen so that they can build up an army to take revenge for Leto Atreides' death in the first film at the hands of the Harkonnen. And that is the overall plot of the movie, with so much intricacy therein that I won't even begin to get into.
Yeah.
Before we go too far ahead, though, and since I'm remembering it now, I do want to thank anybody who clicked on this video. And please, if you made it this far, we're pretty in deep here. Go ahead and click that subscribe button. Why not? It doesn't hurt you at all.
That was very well said. Good description of or summarizing the movie. The movie obviously came out this year, 2024. It's rated PG-13. It's 2 hours and 46 minutes long. And now into the ratings. IMDb has it at a 9 out of 10. Mm-hmm. That's got to be one of the highest scores that we've ever read off of IMDb for a movie review.
It's lower than Across the Spider-Verse started out.
Yeah.
But very high.
And then Rotten Tomatoes for the critics has it at a 94% with 358 reviews. And then the audience has it at 95% with 2,500 reviews. So that means, again, for the Rotten Tomato score is 95% of the reviews were positive. So that's incredible. One, to be that high, but also that the critics and audience are in agreement within 1%.
Yeah.
Rare.
The budget for this movie, again, it's on Andrew's box office team. I'll link that video in the description. But at the beginning of this year, we each drafted 5 movies in hopes to create a team that will bring in the most money over 2024. And this was Andrew's pick.
Arron was not aware that we were trying to pick the ones with the most money when he picked his team.
Yeah.
That's why my team looks so much stronger.
I went a different route. I don't think it's going to pan out, especially after hearing that the box office numbers right now for Dune Part 2 as of Wednesday, March 6th, is 189 million.
Wow.
They have made back their budget.
More money than Oppenheimer made in its opening weekend. And Oppenheimer went on to almost make $1 billion.
Yep.
Wow.
That's where, will this movie be the highest grossing movie of the year? I mean, it's off to a hot start. It's been less than a week.
And it didn't have anything like Barbenheimer to bolster it. It just has the quality of the movie and the word of mouth that's coming with that. I
have never seen a movie be talked about so positively on like TikTok and YouTube as much as this movie has been.
I have not seen a single negative video made about it.
I know. We should honestly make one.
Maybe
so we can go viral and everyone would comment how we're wrong. But yeah, it's off to an incredible start. And behind every incredible movie is an incredible
team.
There we go. And Andrew's going to list all of the creators, both in front of and behind the camera.
So we've already mentioned his name. One of the GOATs already at a young age. The director of this movie is Denis Villeneuve. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Villeneuve. I've heard it both ways.
Yeah. Hey!
The cinematographer, we already mentioned the name as well, Greig Fraser, a freaking legend. Editing done by Joe Walker. The music is done by my personal GOAT for composing in film, Hans Zimmer. It's, John Williams is a legend, and I respect his earned GOAT status from most of the public. But Hans Zimmer is my guy. You don't just do like a spectrum range of Dune, Kung Fu Panda, and The Dark Knight without being one of the best to ever do it. And am I missing anybody? I got editing, music. Yeah, I think I got everybody. And then we got our cast, and I have a game for myself with the cast in front of the camera. I'm gonna try. This movie has probably the sickest, most dope, incredible cast of the year. I'm gonna try to name everybody prominent in the Dune cast. Aaron's double checking me, it looks like on screen, without looking at IMDb. Okay, here we go. So in the star role, we've got Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides, also known as Muad'Dib Usul, also known as the Kwisatz Haderach, also known as the Lisan al Gaib, also known as the Mahdi, also known as the Duke of Arrakis. Duke of Arrakis. That joke's gonna keep coming back. It's funny every time. And then we've
hold it together, Dan.
I'm trying.
That's one. And then we've got Zendaya as Chani. And then we've got Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. And then we've got Dave Bautista as Robin. Don't critique my order. as Robin Harkonnen. We've got Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen. We've got Austin Butler as Fade Rotha. We've got my goat, Florence Pugh. I'm going to keep using that term. Florence Pugh as Lady Irulan. We've got Christopher Walken as the Emperor. We've got, let's see, who am I missing? Let me think. Oh my gosh. We've got Javier Bardem as Stilgar.
There's one more big one that I don't think you've mentioned.
Anna Taylor-Joy as Princess Alia. And let me just think through. There's the Fremen. I think I got all of them. There's the Harkonnen, the Emperor, his daughter. Dang, who would I be missing?
I think the only one you're missing out of the big cast members is Josh Brolin.
Dang it, yes. As Gurney Halleck.
Yes.
And I knew that one. I told you.
Did you say the Emperor?
Yeah, Christopher Walken.
Yeah, I thought
and
so.
I knew that one too, and that's the one I almost forgot when I was like, I tried to do it in my head beforehand, and that was the one that I almost missed was Josh Brolin, and then I missed it doing it live.
That was really good, though.
But I knew
that was really good.
I knew his name, Gurney Halleck. I knew who he plays.
Gurney's my favorite character.
Really?
He's played by Sir Patrick Stewart in the original Dune.
I saw that. I saw some clips. Dune 1984. Oh my gosh! I almost want us, and we don't have enough time in this episode.
No.
Maybe in a follow-up Dune episode to watch the fight scene you mentioned in the first movie with between Gurney and Paul. In 1984, it looks crazy.
It would be really cool to do a reaction and then react to the 2022 version.
Yeah.
And see how they compare.
And we also didn't get to see them in this movie, but in Dune Part 1, you've got Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, and you've got
one of my favorite
Oscar
characters.
Isaac as Leto Atreides.
Yeah.
There were also people cut from this movie too, which is so unfortunate. I know they were still mentioned in the credits. They're still on the IMDb page, and there's a special mention of them in the credits, but Denis had to cut the
computer guy.
The calculator.
Yeah. What's his name?
I can't remember.
Oh, we're so sorry.
I know.
We're so sorry. Okay, let's move into our ratings of the film. When we're doing a movie review, we break this down into 6 different categories that we think best describe a film. And the first of which we think is the most important of them all. It is out of 10 points, and that is the story. So, Andrew, what did you give the story?
So I want us all to do our ratings, but then before we talk about the plot in depth, I want to do a segment on terminology for anybody that might get confused because there's so much terms in this movie. So my rating for the story, I gave it a really high score. I gave it a 9 out of 10. And the only point that I dock it for is that some of the time jumps in editing I don't think are as clear as they could be, which I appreciate. I appreciate them not treating me like an idiot. I appreciate them respecting their audience enough.
But they thought you were too smart.
Yeah. And you're going to say the same thing? Oh my goodness. Arron queued me up to talk first. That's his fault.
I'm sorry. I should have gone with you. I just didn't know if you were ready to rock. I didn't want to.
I got my notes.
Okay.
I got my notes.
Dude, he's got a lot of notes.
God. Okay, I'm going to you first from now on.
No.
But yes.
You can tell mostly, but I think there's some parts that maybe could have been a little bit clearer.
Absolutely.
And not to knock the movie, it's still a great movie.
I mean, 9 out of 10. I can't think of another movie off the top of my head.
9 out of 10 is so high, and the story arcs were just so good. I don't want to get into it though because I want to do the terminology.
Dan, what did you give it out of 10?
I want to confirm. See, I said 9 out of 10 for the story.
That's so funny.
So I had the exact same thing. The only thing I knocked it for was I don't know if everyone can understand that these are not this is not happening in a week. These are years going by. Anyone who understands the storyline of Dune is going to know that Paul Atreides is out in the desert for a long time.
I think in the book, in the book I know I haven't read it, but I know it's years. I think in the movie it might be months because she's pregnant the whole time, isn't she?
Yeah, they messed with the timing.
Yeah, they changed it around, and that's even more confusing than if you know that in the book it's years, and it's
and that's what messed with me a little. And I'm glad that they didn't do anything so campy as a musical interlude or 4 hours later. They didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
They kept it where if you were a Dune aficionado and you knew the story or at least were somewhat familiar with it, you knew that this was a long time that was going by. But at the same time, could they have done it a little better? I don't know.
Okay.
We have a lot of segments in this episode, by the way. After Arron does his rating, I'm going to do the definitions. We'll do that as a team.
Yeah.
And then after we're done with all of our rating scales, then I have a little segment on, this is a long one, a little segment on the book versus the movie, the adaptations. And then we have comparisons, Dune things that Star Wars potentially took or were inspired by from Dune.
Which we could even do that at the end too, so we can get through all of our ratings.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Both of those we'll do after the ratings.
Cool.
Desert planet? No, doesn't exist in Star
Okay,
Wars.
don't shoot me on my rating.
Oh my God, you didn't go below an 8, did you?
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
This guy.
But I think the reason for it, or the way that I justify the 7, is for a lot of the reasons of what Dan was saying. Is that the story for me, not having really any knowledge of the world of Dune, was very deep and complex. And I did feel lost at a lot of times. And I feel like I'm pretty good at like keeping up with movies and diving in analytically and, like learning more about movies and or about the scenes and stuff. But for this, especially the first one into this one, it was just hard to follow some of the stuff. Like you saying that it's taking course over years. I didn't know that. I've learned a lot in the probably 3 or 4 days since we've seen the film. And I have to say that I've enjoyed it a lot just being on TikTok, on YouTube, and watching people talk about the world and talk about the things that I missed and explaining all of these terms for one person and all that stuff. Because it was so dense, for me, I couldn't give it any higher than a 7.
I think that
just yet.
Just to clear up,
could change after another viewing or two.
Just to clear up the timeline stuff, because I can already see the comments coming in that we had clues for it. I think it takes place over months because of the pregnancy and her talking to the baby throughout the movie. But I think that they do give us clues if you're really looking for them, like him waking up in the tent with Zendaya. They wouldn't be sleeping in the tent together the next day. And she also says to him when they wake up in the tent, like, you haven't had that dream in a while, implying that they're close enough now for him to tell about the dreams, and that she's been sleeping in the tent so long that she knows that there's a gap since he's had the dream. And also his eyes have turned blue, which indicates that he's been exposed to the spice for a long period of time, because that's where the Fremen themselves get the blue eyes from. And so, like, there's all these context clues, like him getting to ride the sandworm. It's the rite of passage you don't get to do right away. But it does help when you have the knowledge from the books. You have actual access to understanding this stuff so much easier.
I feel like I was way more in the dark for the first film and way more lost in the first film than I was the second film.
That being said, I think these movies do way better at telling the story of the universe and filling people in than the originals or the miniseries.
Yeah.
Like, bar none, this was the best depiction of the Dune universe I have ever seen on screen.
I think that they did a really good job translating it. I mean, like, from the source material, it seems like a really hard franchise to adapt.
Well, yeah, like a lot of the critiques of this film is that, or even the first one, is that there's so much information that you kind of feel like, even when watching the first film, that you missed the whole movie.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard from people who have read the books, that you have kind of the same feeling. And when researching and stuff, like, the book didn't take off right away. It was turned down by a bunch of producers, and then finally someone picked it up. Publisher picked it up, and they did like car magazines or something.
And it bombed.
Yeah.
They didn't sell any.
Yeah. And it took a while to like get traction. Even my wife started reading the book, and I don't know how far she got in, but she was like, this is really dense. Like, she reads a lot. She reads a ton. And she's like, I have to think so hard when I'm reading this book,
Did you guys do the research into Frank Herbert and how he came up with the Dune universe?
No.
I believe he was like on a trip somewhere, but that's all I know.
He lived in Oregon, and there was some sand dunes in Oregon. And and a bunch of ecology people were trying to keep the sand dunes from expanding further. So they were putting grass and building these grass pits and stuff to keep the sand from moving. That was the beginning. And then he became fascinated with religion, Messiah complex, that kind of stuff. And so he began to create this universe. And that's why I gave it so high of a rating, is because of the richness of the universe. The culture. It's a feudalistic society that's spacefaring.
Yeah, the Fremen culture is so much more present in this movie than in the first movie. And Denis and Timothée Chalamet have both stated in interviews that the first movie, making it, was the foundation. Timothée Chalamet called it like the foundation, and now they can build a skyscraper in this movie with all these crazy action scenes. And Denis said, like, he felt like after he made the first one that he could kind of breathe, and then he could work in the sandbox. He said he built the sandbox, and now he could play in the sand with the second movie, which goes to my biggest complaint about the first movie is that it's just feels like everyone has said this too. I'm not original, but it feels like it was made to make Dune Part 2. But now I'm glad that they made it because now they've made a movie that I love so much. I just wish that like the first one didn't feel like that.
Yeah,
I wish
the
I
first
liked it
one was
more.
hard to get through for us. Like I rewatched it with Andrew. It was his first time, like a week before it came out, the second one, and I was having trouble keeping Andrew invested, let alone myself, into the movie.
It's not rewatchable. I watched it once, and
Yeah.
as soon as it came out, and I loved it, but I'd never seen it again. There's
Yeah.
no need once you get, especially if you already know the story.
Yeah.
It's
I would rewatch Dune Part 2. Like I wouldn't go now that it's out, I wouldn't watch Dune Part 1. It's like I know enough now.
Yeah.
I can just rewatch Dune Part 2, which is a much
Same.
better movie. It's not that the first one isn't well made because it's fantastically well made. It's just it's missing, like, to me, the characters don't feel as rich, the characters don't feel as interesting, and then they get interesting in this movie. And the action is a lot more present.
Absolutely.
Pacing's better. Do you want to do the terminology now?
Yep. Let's hear it.
Okay. There's a lot of terminology.
I need help with this.
Okay. So tell me if there's anything I missed. We're going to do our Dune Part 2 terminology breakdown for you guys so you can use this information to help you understand anything you might have missed. So there's a couple names for Timothée Chalamet's character that a lot of them basically mean Messiah. So Timothée Chalamet plays Paul Atreides from the House Atreides. He's by the Fremen, he's called Mahdi or Lisan al-Gaib. Both basically mean that he's their Messiah. Mahdi literally translates to the one who leads the way to paradise. And he's also called the Kwisatz Haderach, which is a Bene Gesserit term for prophecy. I'll get to what they are as well. And he's also called Madip Usul, which Madip is the Fremen word for the desert mouse. And Usul is like his Fedaykin name, his warrior name. So Fedaykin is a Fremen term for warrior. I should probably say what the Fremen are. The Fremen are the people of Arrakis. They are like a sand warrior-based culture. They have really interesting warrior culture that I'll get into later when we talk about the differences between the movie and the book. They have been pushed out of their home by invading forces who want to take over the control of spice production. Spice is this special material that is found only on Arrakis, which is used for space travel as fuel, but it also gives people these like visions or has like these spiritual powers. It turns the eyes of the Fremen blue. So it has all these like mystical effects as well as being a fuel. A sand crawler is this big machine that harvests the spice. And let's see, what else am I missing? Harkonnens. Harkonnens are a house of... In the book, they're originally like red-headed and pale, but in the movie, they're pale and bald, and they're like another animalistic, brutal warrior culture to contrast the Fremen, and they're put in charge of controlling spice production on Arrakis by the Emperor. The Emperor is the head of this big intergalactic force that controls like the galaxy and the entire world in the Dune universe. And then there's these several houses that are kind of underneath him, including Atreides, Harkonnen, and others. Let's see. There's a big thing in the Dune universe is the sandworm, also called Shai Hulud or the Maker. It's a giant beast of a worm, basically, that tunnels through the ground by using these vibrations to soften the sand so it can move through the sand like water. It has all these giant teeth in the opening of its mouth that are used to make the sword or the Chris knife that the Fremen use. So that's like a very significant weapon in their culture. Zendaya says in the first movie, it'll be an honor for you to die with this Chris knife, which is made from the tooth of Shai Hulud. Let's see, still suits. Still suits are worn by the Fremen, originally made by the Fremen, but then the Harkonnen have their own as well. That it's used to survive in the harsh climate of Arrakis. It recycles your body's water so that you can use your same water for days and survive in the desert because Arrakis is so hot, and it's obviously a desert planet, so it's all sand. There's not water for you to drink. Let's see, anything else? Like, was there anything?
Did you define the Bene Gesserit?
That is a good one. Good job. Thank you. So the Bene Gesserit is this group of females that control society from the shadows. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like witches. They have a power called the voice, which we'll get into later, how it's similar to the force, because it allows you influence over other people's minds. When they master like the pitch of their voice, they can give commands that people have to obey. And really one of my favorite things about this movie, now that we're getting into the plot, is the increased focus on the Bene Gesserit culture and the Fremen culture. Because in this movie, it's although it's mentioned in the first movie, we get to see in Dune Part 2 how the Bene Gesserit go about controlling society from the shadows. They go through so much. They're interbreeding between different houses. They're getting their women impregnated by the Harkonnens or the Atreides in order to, and they also have all these other mystical abilities. Like they can control their bodies really well. We see in the movie Rebecca Ferguson's character, the Reverend Mother, Lady Jessica. She, so that's another term too, Reverend Mother. Reverend Mother.
Which is, there's a couple of Reverend Mothers throughout
throughout the movie. Yeah, the Reverend Mother they have all the memories of the past Reverend Mother, so it's a high spiritual position. But in the movie, we see how she can convert a poison into her body to make it non-lethal, but they can also convert a baby in their womb to change its gender. So they generally create women to have more Bene Gesserit and continue on the line. That's why they interbreed the houses to make more Bene Gesserit women. So that's where we get the scene in this movie where one of the Bene Gesserit, Lady Margot, I think is her name, she impregnates herself with Fade Rotha's baby, Austin Butler. And so like they're basically creating these lines down and down that to like continue the control of the Bene Gesserit. But in Lady Jessica's case, she made a son. She made her baby a boy because Leto Atreides wanted a son and an heir. So she basically like broke Bene Gesserit law in an effort to give Leto what he wanted, but also to fulfill the prophecy. The Kwisatz Haderach is a prophecy of the Bene Gesserit, this being that they will eventually bring about through their interbreeding through years and years, who is like essentially the chosen one who will unite space and time and everybody across the universe and like make everything better. And so she thinks that this is going to be her son. That's why she made Paul, part of the reason. And the queen mother bee of the Bene Gesserit like resents her for doing this, and that's why we get that scene in the first movie where she puts Paul's hand in the box, and we get the awesome line from Rebecca Ferguson where she says, "Fear is the mind killer." There's got to be so much more terminology that I'm missing though. I feel like.
That's got to cover most of it, though.
Yeah,
That was so
it's
much.
a good synopsis of the Dune. That's the Cliff Note version. Yeah. That's sad. That's the Cliff Note version, by the way. Like,
There's ornithopters, and that's they fly those interactive.
The sound was so good. I'm sorry.
There's so much good stuff. But like I said, that's one of my favorite things about the plot of this movie is getting the behind the curtain of the culture of the Fremen and their religion and their prophecies and the idea of the Lisan al-Gaib and the split and divide in their culture of the South who worship the idea of the Lisan al-Gaib and the North who are a little more reserved, and Zendaya's character thinking that he's like a false prophet basically, and that the Bene Gesserit are manipulating them, adding all these interesting layers that are a little bit different from the book. So I just feel like the plot of this movie, you could go on and on and on. Like it's so cool, the religious motifs, the idea, because it's obviously the Fremen are based on like Middle Eastern culture, and like the Lisan al-Gaib is like a prophet, a messiah like Muhammad, and they're foretelling a prophet that will come along, and the Mahdi is supposed to lead them to paradise. He's supposed to change their earth. Like there's a line where Timothy Chalamet answers, Stilgar says, "What do you see for our people?" And Paul says, I see green and water. Like he's going to lead them to paradise. Their world is like a hellscape. It's too hot to be outside. They have to wear hoods. They have to wear still suits. So they're believing that he will fix their world. But on the other hand, there's the contradicting idea that he's a false prophet utilizing the Fremen's belief in him in order to exact revenge and take power, which is what he's trying to fight for the first half of the movie until he drinks the water of life from baby Shai Hulud.
Dan, what was your favorite part of the story?
Oh my goodness! So you touched on the Bene Gesserit and how they were manipulating the lines to keep control of the feudal houses and really to control the emperor. Like the emperor himself was basically a figurehead, and I think those scenes were so expertly done in that. I enjoyed the messianic stuff. That was interesting to me, and there were some very compelling issues that were addressed in that. But primarily, I have to say, like the Bene Gesserit scenes where they are controlling and manipulating from the shadows, that everyone thinks that they're getting control, but it really, they're over everybody controlling.
When the leader of the Bene Gesserit said that she's the one who went in the Emperor's ear and told him to have the Harkonnens attack House Atreides, she's
such a good actress.
She set everything in motion. She is the reason that the plot of this movie's happening. Like she gave him the idea and had him do all the events that lead to the rise of the Kwisatz Haderach, and she's against it too, weirdly, but like she is the linchpin of the story, and she's not even like in it as much as so many other characters.
I wrote that specifically in one of my notes about that scene. That's Charlotte Rampling who plays that. I'm gonna mispronounce the name, Gaius Helen Mohaim, and she's the Bene Gesserit mother, Reverend Mother.
I think they call her Reverend Mother Mohaim.
Yeah.
She's from part one.
Yeah.
Right? She's the one that has.
She's the one with the hooded
put
face.
the hand in the box.
Which adds to the talent of her acting is
Oh,
you can't
yeah.
even, her face is completely shrouded by
That scene where her and I believe it's Princess Irulan is in there with her, and it's that little vertical slice of that window casting the light, and they're sitting like face to face talking, and that scene is so chilling to me because she coldly lays out millions have died, like life is nothing. She's so above everybody, and she's just this cold, calculating, horrible woman.
She's like a god, but like her and the true power, you know, that people talk about, the idea of true power, like she's behind the scenes. True power is controlling the universe and nobody even knowing your name.
Yeah.
Like there's a great line in the movie where I think it's Paul says, he who holds the power to destroy something controls it. And she holds the power to manipulate the emperor and the events to destroy everything. So she truly is so far been the one with the most power until Paul puts her in her place.
And that's
Consider what you're about to do, Paul Atreides. Silence.
That was a really cool part.
Abomination. Such good. Anyway, the whole scene there, in that scene, really is what makes the movie good. If you took that scene out, it would just weaken everything. Everything would weaken. But there's a tentpole moment in that scene that sells the rest of the movie. Everything now makes sense, that this was all a huge manipulation on the part of the Bene Gesserit.
And the concept of our focus as an audience being so strongly on the Fremen and Harkonnen and Atreides, whereas the Bene Gesserit are the ones controlling the story.
We all hit on Duke Harkonnen, how evil he is. You know, we hate him so much. Oh, look at all the evil he's doing, and his little sons and how they're evil and crazy. But
nephews.
They were nephews?
Yeah.
Oh, nephews. Sorry. Did I say sons? Oh, nephews. Yeah. So the nephews. Anyway, so how crazy it was. But in reality, though, their evil is more upfront and obvious. The Bene Gesserit.
She's so much more sinister, don't you
yeah.
think? Oh, God. I'm glad we agree on this because I was so excited. I left the theater. Like, I love how much they showed us of the Bene Gesserit. Like, the scene with Feyd-Rautha it's so good. And they are so against Paul because Paul has the abilities of the Bene Gesserit, but they have no influence over him.
Yeah.
And even Lady Jessica is kind of like left the fold for her own like plans.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part?
I'm going to be honest. The story is so big. I need to watch it again to be able to fully grasp everything and experience it enough to really like pinpoint what my favorite part was. Like everything you guys are talking about, I remember and is very interesting, but I can't pinpoint like my original like favorite part. If that makes any sense at all. I've never had this really happen before, you know?
Yeah.
It's
and tell me which side you would pick then, because I agree with you that the Bene Gesserit was one of my favorite parts of the movie. But if I had to pick my absolute favorite, it would be that Messiah aspect and the arc of Timothée Chalamet's character Paul going through to like accepting the role of being the Kwisatz Haderach, and namely like my favorite scene where I feel like I started to feel.
Don't say the worship scene, the one in the big like.
No, not even that. Before that, my favorite scene where I started to feel the intimidation factor from him, and my favorite scene probably in the whole movie. Shout out Greig Fraser for making it my favorite scene, is when he's walking through the shadows in that sandstorm as Robin Harkonnen is trying to take out the Fremen, and they create that big dust bowl, and the Fremen are just rolling in, taking someone out in stealth and disappearing. It's so well lit, and just the thing about Greig Fraser that makes him such a perfect cinematographer, we'll get into this more later, is how well he controls exactly what you see. And when you're seeing Timothée Chalamet walk up and his face is being lit with like the flashes of light, and you see like this dark hooded figure, and then you get the shots of Robin as he's running away, like that trucking shot to the side, following him with all the reds and orange in the background versus his like black suit that makes him really stand out and his stark white face. It's just like, that's where I really started to feel the transformation of his character, and that's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
that part was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a little questionable of why they were on the ground in the first place, though.
They just like to get on the ground. They like to get nitty gritty. Yeah, I agree.
Because they literally they blew up this giant rock, went down to the ground, went out, barely put up a fight, and then just got back on their ships. Like, what was the point of that?
They're getting overwhelmed. The guerrilla warfare tactics of the Fremen were too much. They did that, and they were saying they did that all with 200 men. Everything they did, the harvester attacks, that attack. Like, I initially, when we're still talking about the story, so I initially had a question I wanted to bring about the story of why Paul decided to go south when he was so staunchly against it. And I think ultimately what I came down to is that Feyd-Rautha discovered their siege. So another term, sieges are all these like underground bunkers that the Fremen live in, and there's really this main one that the story takes place in, but there's tons of them in the south where millions of Fremen live, and they destroy this siege in the north. And they destroy this site that was clearly laid out as such an important holy site for them. All the water from their dead, comrades laid into this pool, clearly very spiritually significant to the people. And you see the rocks crumble down on it. My jaw dropped. And I think that is what sent Timothy Chalamet to the south, is the idea that the Fremen will keep hunting them. Or no, I'm sorry, that the Harkonnens will keep hunting them, and that all Fremen may cease to exist if he doesn't take on this villainous kind, in a way, role, this anti-hero role. I think he's doing it, like you said, he sees a narrow way through, and that's such another incredible shot. It's hard not to skip around when you're talking about story, but the shot of his hand as he says, I see a narrow way through, like he's seeing a way where he can try to save the most lives and still protect the people he loves and the Fremen people that he's joined their culture.
So the way that you're explaining that makes him seem like the hero, but the overall like story was him. He's not necessarily the hero. How? Like, can you explain that?
I think that the point of him refusing to go south is he sees all kinds of alternate futures, right? That is an ability he has since he's become the Kwisatz Haderach. Especially after he drinks the sandworm venom, he can see all kinds of different visions. But beforehand, the visions are less clear and more varied. And he sees a future where millions upon millions die because he decides to go south and accept his role, like he says to Gurney. And he foresees a holy war, but eventually he foresees it as a necessary holy war. So I think the reason he's seen as a villain is because if he just gave up, the boot would probably come down on the neck of the Fremen and less people would die. But he's kind of making that decision of characters I love, characters like Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, characters like Joel Miller from Last of Us. He's making the decision like, I'm going to protect my people at whatever cost. And so he's a hero from a certain perspective, especially if you consider the fact that he might be a false prophet. Because yes, evidently he's the Kwisatz Haderach with everything that he can do and falling in line with the prophecies of the Bene Gesserit, but is he truly the Mahdi? Is he truly the Lisan al-Gaib? Because that's a separate prophecy from the Fremen, and that's about leading the Fremen people to like paradise. So is he looking out for himself? Is he getting revenge for his father? Is he being attracted to the allure of power? Or is he the person that's going to truly, is he using the Fremen as a weapon? Or is he protecting the Fremen? I won't know unless I read the books or watch, the next movie.
Spoilers.
You've read the books?
Some of them.
Some of them?
Yeah, not all of them.
Yeah.
I've always been a bigger Star Trek, Star Wars fan. I'm just, like, in the past 2 years, thanks to these movies, I saw the original Dune. And it was like, okay, this is interesting. It's kind of cringy, but it has Sir Patrick Stewart. But otherwise, I never really got into the Dune universe as much until recently.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a taste for it. And now I'm realizing this thing is, I would say it's just as good of a universe as Tolkien's universe, as Roddenberry's and Lucas's. Like these big sci-fi or fantasy-based universes that have rich lore. I would say Dune is up there with it. It might not be as extravagant or as extensive, but I love it.
I like how they're leaning towards their hero being villainous because I love those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
I've heard that he gets worse in the future, and I'm excited for it. I was vocal that when we left the theater that I would have been cheering if he had the Emperor kiss his ring and then killed him anyway. I would have still been happy and rooting for Paul Atreides. I wouldn't stop.
Andrew's not a good person.
I'm a ride or die.
The anti-hero.
I'm loyal.
I would say he's not a hero for the simple fact that he kind of has no choice. Heroes usually have to make a big heroic decision. But Paul Atreides' storyline is kind of written in these prophecies. Like the future's kind of set, kind of. So
That's written. That's so funny. But the thing is, even though the prophecy's written, he still has choice because I would say he definitely still has choice because they mention in the books, especially seeing alternate futures. So he sees alternate potential futures and then he picks one. And like, but there's an argument to be made there. Like, is he picking it because he wants to, or is he picking it because it was written
gonna
for
go
him?
there. And
Historical determinism kind of argument.
It is kind of like, well, this is the way the plot's going to go. And the fact that he had to go south. He had to go south. There was no doubt that he was going south.
It was
Even
either that or die. Lose to the Fremen and accept death.
And eventually we're getting cornered constantly he's getting corralled by this prophecy that he can't escape. It will happen. He will go south. We knew even if you didn't read the book, you knew he was going to go south.
Yeah. I think he could have stayed and accepted death, but I think what he couldn't do is accept defeat because I think he was so hell-bent on getting revenge for his father. I think that's probably more so what was one of his biggest guiding factors.
Yeah.
And then plus every external factor other than Chani wanting him to go south.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, are you guys ready to move on to the next category, or do you got any closing thoughts for this story?
I think I covered
I might circle back to something. It's hard,
Fine.
but yeah.
All right, so our next category is acting, and this is also out of 10. And since I made the mistake of going to Andrew first last time, I'm going to tee you up here. Dan, take it away.
This one's going to be unpopular. I gave it a 7.
Oh,
Yeah, it's unpopular.
Seven?
So it is the
went from a 9 to a 7.
it's the weakest aspect of the movie to me.
Wow.
So there's
You didn't feel like Timothy.
Do you want to name off the cast again?
Yeah, you didn't feel like Timothy completely transformed when after drinking the water of life. Here and hey, look, if I convince you, you can change your score.
yeah. It's okay.
Don't let him convince you.
I'm a huge Anglophile when it comes to acting. British actors, to me, have always been superior to American actors. I really have a strong opinion on that, and I point to any. They just have that understated, very, very a nuanced way of acting that American actors tend to ham it up a little too much, or they're just flat at the wrong time.
I think you can see that in their comedy too. Like British acting and Britain in general is more real and subdued in their terms of their media.
And I think because it's so subdued, it lends the audience to participate more in a movie. And I believe one of my favorite directors of all time, Nicholas Meyer said it best. He goes, and let's see if I can do the quote. I memorized this because it meshed so well with me. Only cinema, the 20th century art medium, has the potential to do it all for you. Paintings do not move. The eye makes them move. Music has no image. And yet you feel the emotions and you can conjure up an image using music and so on and so forth. It's the unskilled participation of the audience which completes the work of art. Cinema, on the other hand, is just this big screen with sound. It just dulls your senses. It blows you away. And I think one of the last bastions of audience participation is acting on screen. You can now infer motives or infer emotions when you watch a tiny nuance. There's a scene in the original X-Men in which Ian McKellen and Sir Patrick Stewart are on opposite sides talking to one another at the beginning of the first movie. And what are you doing up here, Charles? And that scene is so underplayed and so subtle that even a tiny eyebrow lift speaks volumes in that movie. So when I watched the British actors in this movie, especially the older ones, the old guard, they were so stable. And I go back to, I got to write down her name again, Charlotte Rampling, in that scene where she's talking to Princess Irulan. And she's telling what she did, how she orchestrated the Harkonnen takeover of Arrakis, and how everything is proceeding as planned. This is our plan. And the coldness and the sterility of her performance is so good because it tells me more about the person behind that veil than if she had her face out and she was doing these grand gestures, or we saw Zendaya over there nearly crying as she got rejected. Those scenes are more hammy to me than the more subdued, stately, almost royal way that the British actors did it. So when it came to British side of the film, very good. And I think the casting was excellent. I agree. I'm one of those weirdos that even liked Christopher Walken as the Emperor. The friends I was with, my group, hated Christopher Walken. They didn't like him.
I didn't hate him, but he is the one person I would probably recast. The only person in the entire cast. Maybe I was thinking I would recast him with Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins.
Ooh, okay. Well, there's your Anglophile. But anyway, Anthony Hopkins.
I think he did such a good job. And instead, you did what? Rebel Moon? Come on.
Yeah.
It could have been Anthony Hopkins. And I do like Christopher Walken. He's a talented actor. Him being in it kind of took me out of it. He doesn't feel like an imposing figure to me.
But the Emperor was never supposed to be an imposing figure. He's a figurehead.
Yeah.
I can see the casting choice, and I agree with it to that degree.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he's supposed to be this almost wormy character who's really a pretender to the throne. He's not actually the emperor. He doesn't care because the Bene Gesserit are the ones really in charge. They're not going to put somebody who's going to command respect.
I just feel like Christopher Walken's way of talking is almost cartoonish at this point. The way people have
He's a meme.
Impressionized him so
He's a
much.
meme.
That kind of like takes me out. It takes me for a little loop.
You don't want more cowbell?
All right. I want to hear Andrew's score, but then I also want to kind of jump back once we've all said our score and maybe touch on like the parts that didn't land for you all the way. So Andrew, for acting, out of 10 points, what did you give it?
I gave it a 10.
Oh my gosh!
Oh no!
No, you did.
I can't.
No, you did. I don't think you've ever given a 10 in this category before.
For acting?
I can't think of a movie off the top of my head.
Maybe maybe
crazy.
Brokeback Mountain.
That's crazy. 10? Okay, explain.
What movie has better acting than this movie? This is the most talented actors of our age all hammered into one movie. I think Florence Pugh is the most talented actress that we have out there right now. I mean, up there at least, top 5. And then Timothée Chalamet, obviously one of the most talented actors. And Austin Butler delivered on another level. Javier Bardem delivered on another level. Like everyone in my eyes was cooking on everyone on. Dave Bautista delivered the best performance I've ever seen him deliver on such a high level of energy. I was talking to my fiance about this, like doing multiple takes of what Dave Bautista did in this movie must have been physically exhausting. Like the scene,
an athlete.
The 3 scenes that he's in, or not like the 3 scenes I think of him in early on, where he's battering that guy's face against and just screaming, ah! And then when he's walking up to the ornithopter and he's like shouting, screaming over the sound of the ornithopter, like, we have to kill them. Like he's screaming, shouting, physically emoting with his whole body. And I was like, to do multiple takes of that is impressive. And he delivers such a high level of energy. Now, and then seeing him in a scene against Austin Butler, even I was like, wow, Austin Butler performed. The voice was an incredible like homage to Stellan Skarsgård's voice. When they weren't on the screen, if one of them was talking, I couldn't tell which one of them it was.
Yeah, it sounded the same.
And he looked like he enveloped the character physically and poetically in every other way he could. Like, I don't know. I thought, especially in terms of the performance from Javier Bardem as like a religious fanatic, you could see the frickin' sparkle in his eyes of like, my prophet is here. Like, this is what my people have been waiting for hundreds of years.
Looked like
he like, oh my God, and he's another one of the most talented actors alive. His performance in No Country for Old Men is like up there for me with Heath Ledger's Joker, like potential best performance of all time. So I just thought everybody cooked, like fucking cooked. When I say cooked, like Timothée Chalamet is a different person after he drinks the water of life. The look in his eyes is ice cold after he drinks that. He walks into the meeting of the Fremen in the South and just says, no, I'm going to do what I want. And like, Timothy Chalamet looks like he might weigh like 150 pounds. And he was like scary. His acting makes me believe that he is scary. In the first movie, when he gets out of bed shirtless, he's skin and bones. And it's like, he is in him every bit as intimidating as Dave Bautista's Robin.
I don't know. You're making good points, but you're not. I still can't get over. For instance, Timothy Chalamet, good actor,
Good.
but
Who is...
but a lot of what you're describing is also not just his acting, not all of it. It's the presence on screen also has to do with the lens angle the cinematographer selects, also the lighting, the editing, the music, the sound effects. All of it was propping up the character.
Okay, but take him out and put Adam Sandler in there. Not that Adam,
That's not even.
it's a different.
not even.
I mean,
You have to give credit to the actor where credit's due. And Adam Sandler's a great actor, but he couldn't play Paul Atreides.
but again, you're talking about not necessarily skill as opposed to just a specific role that happened to work there. The character, the person, the actor's personality and bearing kind of works there.
But I'm talking about the look in his eyes. I'm talking about the tonality in his voice. Like,
Did you not look into his eyes?
I've said it multiple times.
I
but
got lost in his eyes.
the delivery of like the Fremen lines when he's like, "Long live the fighters." I mean, I just don't know how you didn't see it.
So my score is kind
The
of
same way as me. I mean,
my score is kind of in between yours, but it is a little closer to Dan's. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Phenomenal job. I think you started off your argument by saying like the cast is so big. It's got all of these actors and actresses, but some parts did not. Some parts took away from it getting up to a 10 for me. A 10 is like the best performances that I've ever seen from the whole cast.
what's an example of a 10 for you guys? Think on it.
Prisoners. You could argue for the Dark Knight.
Yeah, that would be my choice.
I mean, there's not a ton that the whole cast is at a 10.
But the thing is, there can only be
know what I'm
two
saying?
10s in all of history. I think this is a 10.
And that's totally fine. See, like when you were talking about how Timothy Chalamet was like fierce to you, and like I didn't feel that.
No?
No, not really. I
think
mean,
there's a- I think
I felt everything around him. I felt that he was being propped up to this character, but I didn't feel it as like if he was on his own in a one-on-one fight or something that, oh, I don't mess with that. I don't mess with Anakin Skywalker. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just didn't feel the
You're
same,
scared
like,
of Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker then?
more so than Timothy Chalamet's
What? Just
Paul,
just
for sure.
We're talking about what the intimidation they bring to the performance, not the force, you know? Like,
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, too.
so okay, but would you argue that Hayden Christensen's a better actor than Timothy Chalamet?
No.
Would you argue the opposite?
That Timothy Chalamet is a better actor than Hayden?
Yes.
I think he is, yeah. I don't think I hold him as high of a regard as you do, though.
I mean, me and so many other people. Also, there's $200 million worth of people already that I think would kind of disagree with you guys about the weight of his performance.
I'm not saying that he did a bad job.
Well,
I'm just not saying that the whole cast, all of the acting together was a 10 out of 10. That you say that all the time. Like, if you're saying that that's the best ever. Like, if I were to give the cinematography a 10 out of 10, like you bring it up all the time, like, all right, that means that's what you're comparing every other movie to.
I think this is the standard to be measured by in my eyes.
Yeah, and it's not for me.
And also,
But it's still really good. I mean, 8 out of 10. That's
when you
pretty
talk
darn high.
about that $200 million, you also have to factor in it's not everyone's going there just for the actors. It's also just it is an early summer blockbuster.
But every edit that I've seen has been of Timothy Chalamet delivering his lines, and not of like
he's
the
the lead
sandworm or. I'm just saying is the edits haven't been of like the sandworm or the special effects or the.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of those, but also
just
like
the sandworm.
yeah, like
Show it to me.
And
bro.
I did not go to Dune Part 2 because of Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
You know, I went because of Denis. I went because of Greig Fraser, because of Hans Zimmer. You know, I went because of this huge epic that you were talking about earlier. That's why I went. I didn't go because Timothy Chalamet, like.
But think about
I'm locked in on his performance as
think,
Paul.
think about the casual viewer. How do you make $200 million in opening weekend? Casual viewers. Who do they come for?
I don't think people
They come for the actors.
I don't know if they come for the actors like they used to, because
It's changing. There's
it
the
used
star
to
the
be
star power is back. I'm telling you
I
guys.
guess it used to be like they would put the names of the actors in movies, like, and people would specifically go if they saw somebody there. And I think there is a subset of the viewership that does do that. But like, I'm with Arron on this when I say I didn't go because of Timothée Chalamet. I didn't go because of Florence Pugh. I didn't go because of Zendaya. I think when it came down to it, I went because of it's Dune, and I like the universe, and I wanted to see it, and I was excited to see how if they were going to keep up with that kind of fidelity and quality, and it was the whole movie as a whole was strong. Everything held up, but the acting in it, there were very good actors who kind of sold it. But I wouldn't say the acting stood out to me as the most important thing in the movie, as opposed to just the overall package was just so well-rounded and so good that in reality, when I think of the movie, I don't think of Timothée Chalamet's performance. I think of just, wow, that was really an amazing storytelling experience.
To back that up, though, like, I also don't think of, like, oh, man, if it wasn't Timothée Chalamet, this would be so much better. Like, I don't think that either.
Yeah, it's true.
Like,
He did
I think
good.
He did a good job,
Yeah.
a really good job.
Who was your guys' favorite performer in the movie? Who struck you guys as the best?
I think Austin Butler did a really good job, like you said.
Yeah.
I do.
It's remarkable how little he was in the movie. Did you actually think about this?
Yeah, he wasn't in it that much.
He wasn't in the first half.
Yeah.
And in a book, apparently, he's in the story very early on. Well, my favorite performer in the movie was Javier Bardem as Stilgar.
Yeah, I would agree on that. So when you talk about performance, his performance sells. And actually, to what your point was, Timothée Chalamet's story arc really is actually bolstered by
It's on the shoulders of Javier Bardem's performance.
Correct.
If you don't believe in him, worshiping him, then the audience doesn't see him as that either.
That's it.
But I think that Javier Bardem in this movie got the biggest reactions from the audiences, the biggest laughs. And I think that he was the character I was most
of memes.
emotionally tethered to, as written. But I was super emotionally tethered to him when I thought that he was going to have to kill him. Also, I rooted and cheered for Timothée Chalamet more for refusing to kill Stilgar or fight Stilgar. But Stilgar just had so much, like, he's such a genuine nature to him when he was like, now would be a good time to fight me. I'm weak. You can kill me and take control. And like, he was ready to give up everything for the Fremen people, for his beliefs. He's so devout. And I thought Javier Bardem was Stilgar. Nobody in my eyes could take his place in that role. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my 7. Sorry.
Y'all are haters.
I didn't hate.
Haters.
Hate would be 3 or below. That
I don't know if we've ever.
Andrew has this notion that if someone doesn't agree with him, they're like 100% wrong. There's no compromise. So,
But there's something compelling about that. I have to agree. It's very exciting.
it is.
Is it a belief or is it a fact?
It's a belief. You're not always right.
No, am I always right? No.
Probably not.
No, I'm certain I'm not always right.
Me neither. Most of the time, I'm not
usually
right,
second guessing myself.
I'm never right, and you can.
You heard me here first, folks. All right, moving on.
Can we cut and space that?
Moving on to cinematography.
What I was gonna say is I'm always
No,
right.
you lost it. You lost it. Well, it's gone.
I'm just just saying the joke now. What I was gonna say is I'm always right, and you can trust that because I said it, and I'm always right.
Yeah, it doesn't land as hard.
Not the second time.
Okay, cinematography is our next category, and this is my favorite category to talk about when it comes to movies and shows. Now, there is a lot that is encompassed in this category for our purposes of rating the film, and that is the shot design or composition, what lenses they use, the lighting. But we also throw in like CGI and visual effects and then also like camera movement and stuff like that. So there's
You've heard of CGI, right?
I am slightly familiar with it. It's that computer stuff, right? Like Jar Jar Binks? Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into this category. And again, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Dan, what did you give it?
Okay,
Out of
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
But it's teetering toward 10. And here is why. There's one segment of this film that the CGI really rots. Yeah. And it's not because of the VFX artists. I'm sure the VFX artists tried their best, but it was the color grading of the sequence. Do you guys, am I getting closer? You guys know what I'm talking about? The color grading of the sequence.
Oh, you're talking about the sequence.
you talking about-
I know what you're talking about. I don't want to cut your review.
That made the CGI look so fake that it couldn't win. It's the arena sequence on
Getty Prime.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Interesting.
actually the color grading. Do you know how they shot that?
how?
They shot with infrared cameras.
No way.
So the scene in Getty Prime that you're referencing is when Fade Rotha, played by Austin Butler, takes on the drugged Atreides house members, and it's all obviously in this black and white. But they didn't shoot on black and white film stock. They didn't shoot in black and white, or they didn't even shoot in log and edit it into black and white. They shot on infrared cameras, which captures a spectrum of light that our eyes can't see. You guys, I'm sure, are all familiar with infrared. It's been around for like 100 years. And what that does is put like this super contrasty image where it's like initially it'll be like really, really saturated black and whites and like really have a high glow intensity to where like it's hard to visually see infrared. Like not hard to see, but would be difficult to watch and not visually pleasing for a film. So like they shot with infrared cameras and then they edit it and like tone down that glow quality to like smooth it over. So that's why like there's black in the mouth of Fade Rotha, and his skin is obviously very pale white. And so when they toned it down, there's just this really contrasty part of the image, which in the concept of the story in the film is coming from the black sun. So you'll actually see these really cool transition shots that I loved in the movie, where they come out of like a lit room in the dark where they're full of color, and they transition into
that makes sense.
into this infrared view, which is being cast upon them by the black sun. It's not like colors being sucked out. It's the black sun is casting this light onto them.
Okay,
it's-
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Yeah.
I changed one score. I
Yeah,
can't do
10 out of 10. It was teetering. It was almost over the edge.
It's an Alexa LF camera that had been modified to be an infrared
I
camera.
didn't know they did that. That is so
See,
cool.
there's a lot of aspects in the story, but also how they make it to that, like you miss some things sometimes.
It just kind
It's a
of
lot.
made it hard for the CG to sell. And like when they're walking down the court, like the big street with all it was hard. It was a hard sell on me. And as a VFX artist, I'd go, I would never have want to worked on that that segment, on that sequence, because it would be so hard to sell the visual in a way.
As not a CGI artist, Andrew, did you notice anything funky about that?
I thought at some points, like when you're looking at the expressions on Austin Butler's face, that it was kind of like smoothed over, maybe just from like the way that it looks to
It
our eyes.
created like this extra glow.
Yeah, it was like there was a glow where, to some degree, it seemed like a filter that made it so I couldn't see like wrinkles on his face or like. But it didn't bother me because I accepted it as part of the. Like I noticed that I was like, oh, maybe I can't get quite as much of detail from the image because of that. But I was like so enamored and excited with the way that they moved from the colored sequence into that I just bought into
Like,
it more.
It took me out of the action. That was the sad part. Like I was like, oh, the CGI is bad. Like, and what are they doing? I didn't understand what they were doing. But now that you explain it, I see the technical decision was a really good one. It just, I wish it. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Played a little better for you. Yeah, as also not a CGI artist, I didn't really notice anything funky other than like it kind of glowing and everything being a little smooth. But I just thought of that as like a stylistic choice of this world. Yeah. And it did take me a little bit to also figure out that it was the sun that was casting that, but it didn't take me out of it enough to where I did kind of grasp, oh, when they're inside, like that's...
So were like the
That's when it's in
fireworks
colors
bothering
and
you?
stuff.
Like the fluid fireworks?
No, that was neat. Because I understand it's a stylized world, and I get that, and I like the idea of stylized worlds. I don't like, why are there fireworks? Why not something else on a planet that the laws of physics are going to be maybe the same, but it's a different type of atmosphere, or it's a different type of gravitational field. Like, what is going to happen on this planet as opposed to another planet? They would have different ways of celebrating too.
Sure.
And the Harkonnens are all about artificiality. Everything is sterile, awful, and cold. And they did this even in the original movie, the original Dune in 1980s, where it was all very, very oily and grimy and gross. Like it was almost like like oil baths and blobs and just ugly.
Yeah, Baron comes out of an oil bath.
Yeah.
Andrew, what did you give the cinematography?
Oh, I teetered right on to that 10 out of 10, boy.
Nice.
10 out of 10, back to back. The cinematography was stunning. The cinematography, like I said at the beginning of the episode, Greig Fraser absolutely decimated, killed with this movie. Like, him and Denis working together absolutely just rocked the house on this movie with the cinematography. The control, like I said, the control of what you see versus what you don't see, the manipulation of the eyes of the audience, the use of dark versus light, and then like the control even of the timing of light, like when they would flash a light across Timothée Chalamet's face. Man, it was just completely on another level. Special effects were so good throughout. I mean, the Shai Hulud looks so good. The sand looks amazing. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Like they had incredible camera movement too. Like one of my favorite shots is Dave Bautista. Like I said, the trucking shot along as he's running away as Robin, and from the fear of the Fremen onslaught, and the backlighting. There's like explosions and like flashes of light behind him, and it's so exciting. It's so dynamic for your eyes. It's a feast. Like there's so much to look at, and like they really gave us everything.
I think as telling to what Andrew just said, I can't even get my words out. Like when you described that tracking shot while he's running back toward the shuttle there, and I could see it again.
Yeah.
Like it left such a visual impact on my psyche, on my memory, that is a hallmark of effective cinematography.
The simple shot of his hand as he says, "I see a narrow way through," is a simple shot of his hand has stuck with me in my mind. So like,
as it does it, yeah.
Thinking about it multiple times since I watched this movie. But what about you, Arron?
I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Ooh, close.
A 9 out of 10. And I think the main reason is because it's kind of all in, for the most part, one desert planet. So there wasn't a lot of variety of different types of light. I mean, outside of the infrared scene, which I thought was really cool.
So we get the dark Sietches, we get the desert surface, we get the Emperor's Palace with...
I feel like I could be really close to a 10, but I don't want to give in to peer pressure. Like,
You do you.
You do you, boo-boo.
but I feel like, again, if I watch this again, like, especially knowing more about the story, I feel like I could relax more into the movie and I'll appreciate every aspect of the film even more. So I'm going to stick with the 9, but I could easily see this changing to a 10. I looked back at my other scores that we've given Greig Fraser for cinematography. We did The Creator. I gave that a 10 out of 10. And he was one of the people that worked on that. He
Tapped out at the end, I guess.
because he had to go film Dune.
Yeah.
And then
he did.
Also Blade Runner. Or no, not Blade Runner. What else did he do?
Batman.
The Batman was a 10 out of 10 for me. And then Rogue One, I don't remember what the score we gave
High
that
score.
one, but it was
high.
super
It better
high.
be.
Yeah. I can actually
my
pull that
favorite
up right
Star
now.
Wars movie.
I think that this is one of his best works. I mean, the lighting throughout the desert and like the shady aspects. Like he works so well in that.
That's why I didn't remember Rogue One, was because we did Rogue One
Before we had a
so
rating
long
system.
ago. We didn't have a rating system. That was episode 12.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we didn't have a rating system yet. But I would give it a 10 out of 10.
I thought the movie was just beautiful with the orange and red tones, like
Yeah.
some of the purples at sunset.
I mean, it's the thing that I think about most when returning back to the movie in my head is the cinematography, but then also the sound design, which we're getting into for our next category. And
Can I say one more thing about the cinematography?
absolutely.
He did. So I was looking at these books, and you look at the book covers of every Dune book. They all have the same color tones because you're stuck with that. That's what Frank Herbert describes. So you kind of are married into this. And yet to use that color grade and do stuff new with it, he's working with a static palette, essentially. But within those confines, he has infinite opportunities because of his imagination. It shows you just how skilled an artist can be, even within restrictions. And that's what made me really enjoy the movie too was the cinematography of it was just so
I
good.
feel very impressionable right now. I feel like I could change it to a
Sorry,
10.
it's just pushing.
The shots of the Harkonnen in the opening as they're coming up that rock face with their zero gravity suits, like
yes.
it floats up with them like this shot for so long.
Or the Emperor's battleship with its shiny surfaces, and you see the reflection of the ground as it goes over you.
Oh my God! Yes,
What a shot!
You see the reflection of the capital city, Arrakis,
Yeah.
and it's just like bending and folding, and it's like this, what would you call that? Like this distortion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like certain,
like chrome.
There's a certain
Yeah,
term for it because it like bevels it in the middle.
Distortion, I think is the right word.
Yeah, it's distorted.
Also, we haven't even talked about the worm scenes at all.
They're so good.
Like, what did you guys think of him like riding the worm for the first time? What did you think of that sequence?
Okay, I understand the timing. That was what actually killed the timing of, and that's why I hit. That was specifically. It seemed like it happened too soon, but he had been in the desert for a long time.
Sure.
I had to keep informing myself. Oh yeah, this isn't just happening now.
Yeah.
It's so good visually. Oh, they finally did it. The original 1984 version. I don't know if you guys ever saw it. It's bad.
I saw a clip. But
It's so bad.
kind of like a moving rock wall.
It's terrible.
There's some parts in the 1984 version that actually surprisingly didn't look too bad, but then there's horrible parts that.
But they were working on such a terribly restricted budget, so I get it. But this finally shows Dune as it really meant to be seen. This and that's why I give such high marks to the cinematography. It finally does Frank Herbert the justice he deserves.
This is when a movie should be redone. When it's been 40 years and the technology's progressed so far that you can actually show in its full grandeur the original artist's intention.
Yeah.
Do you guys know why the worm doesn't go under the sand when they're riding it?
I do, but if it's your point, I'll let you say it.
It's because those hooks that he got on, it's lifting up the
Skin folds.
Yeah, the skin folds of the worm, and you can see like it breathing
Yep.
or like the little holes. And the worm doesn't want to go into the sand and get all that sand inside of him.
Another brilliant reason why the cinematography.
But they don't explain it. They just show it for
but
you.
visually,
Which
it
is
was
so
a
cool.
perfectly good explanation.
But that's also why they can control the direction. Because if you pull up, it wants to go up because the sand starts to get into it more, so it wants to avoid it. And you pull towards one side, the sand's opening
Yep.
up. So they're turning away from the pain.
Very cool. All right, are we ready to go to sound design, our next category? So this includes the original score, the soundtrack, and all the Foley work. So everything that you're hearing is encapsulated into this category. This is also out of 10 points. Dan, take it away.
Oh, I'm another one teetering. 9 out of 10.
Okay. Okay.
So the sound.
Andrew's pretty predictable over here.
Sound-
10 of 10 all the way
The
across.
sound was what I wrote my notes. I'm just going to read them. The sound was breathtaking. That was what I used. And I mean, Hans Zimmer's soundtrack is perfect. There's not a missed note in that entire. Oh God, I need that soundtrack. Anyway,
In my veins.
I need it. They inject it right into the back of the skull. It fits so well with the creation of the universe. So when this universe, I started. I don't know if it was when we were airing or like earlier, but I was telling you guys how it's such a rich universe. I have never seen a director use sound design to such a degree to quickly get you into the story. Like, because it's such a rich universe, you could have like what they did in 1984, where they have long dissertations and exposition scenes using dialogue.
Voiceover.
Yeah, with the pointer. And so you see, Timmy, and it's so dry. But here, instead, he uses sound as a powerful instrument to get you into the world. You understand this object is dangerous based on the sound it is making. You understand that the environment is doing what it is doing because of the sound of the ambient world around you. Everything about the sound was so purposeful. The only reason I gave it a 9 instead of a 10, and it might have been because of the theater I was in, the bass got a little overpowering and muddied the sound a little too much for me. Like and maybe it was just the theater I was in didn't have their system set right.
That happened to me when I was watching the Iron Claw. They like turned the volume up, like you could hear them turn it up during the commercials, and they kept it there, and it was, like you said, a little overpowering.
They wanted to be able to hear the movie from the concession stand.
Yeah.
They're like, I really like the Iron
Yeah.
Claw. I thought that, and to speak to one thing you said about exposition, I think, just thought of this randomly. One of my favorite scenes of exposition in any movie is the Jurassic Park scene where the dinosaurs, where the DNA is teaching them about. And I feel like that is so on the nose for exposition to the point where they're like making fun of exposition and making it entertaining and creative. But this movie, like you said, it does a lot of the world building with music. Hans Zimmer, whenever he does a movie, he does it full throttle. And he uses the music of the inspirational culture to inform the music he makes for the movie. So when he did Kung Fu Panda, he used instruments from China. For this movie, he used, I can't remember the name of the instrument, but he used a specific, it might be called a duduk. It's probably way off. But he used an instrument from the Middle East because it's inspired by the story in the desert is inspired by the Middle East. So he uses actual instruments from the culture to make you feel the world more. And it's just, when it comes to geniuses at their craft, Hans Zimmer is just so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And like my favorite track in the whole thing is Fade Routher's track when he first enters the Coliseum. And it's just so like, it's so intimidating and so like imposing. I feel like it really creates fear and dread. But outside of the music, the sound design of the thumpers was so cool. The thumpers create so much like thrill and dread. Like they're ominous. The thumpers just boom, boom, rhythmically like pounding the sand. It's like that is the sign that a sandworm is coming. Like what's more intense than that in the universe of Dune? So
What do you think of the voice?
the voice I liked better in this movie. I feel like in the first movie it had a quality that was like a I don't know, like a screaming cat quality that was kind of like grating.
Yeah.
And in this movie I feel like it was more just like thunderous, like silence. Like
So I
thought they
like the
improved
voice
it.
better in this one too.
And I think that was also a sound design decision that everyone kind of has a different take on the voice. So some people's voices sound a little different than others.
Yeah,
sure.
I think. But I really liked the effect in this one. Like you felt it. viscerally.
Dude, when he said silence,
Yeah, you like
sat her ass down.
my seat moved.
Well, what really sold it was all the other like fierce characters there going,
Yeah.
You saw Fade Routher's reaction. He was like, oh shit.
it was like, oh, snap, I'm about to fight this guy.
May thy knife chip and shatter. His voice was so good. That's another element of sound design, I guess.
Yeah, it was.
But-
I gave this a 9 out of 10 as well. Did you give your score yet?
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10? Nice.
Hans Zimmer cooking, the sounds of like the crisp knives, the blades, the sandworm, the thumpers. I mean, the rhythmic beat of the ornithopters, wings flapping. Like it was amazing.
I'm looking through his filmography. It's insane. I can't even name these movies because it's literally any movie you think of that was really good.
Hans
He
Zimmer.
did it.
It's yeah.
In the last
Crazy.
20 years, yeah.
It's crazy. He's done everything.
Yeah.
It's
He
so
took
good.
off
little bit of
when
this,
John Williams' age and health started coming. So he basically took the baton from John Williams and ran with it. And has
that's
run with the same skill and tenacity.
That's what Greig Fraser is doing right now.
Taking the
They're like
taking the
handing it off.
taking the baton from the goat Roger Deakins.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of the handoff right now.
And it's not saying that one is better than the other. In reality, it's just saying one's building on the foundation that the other one left.
Absolutely.
And you're building on a body of work. You're learning from the previous generation and then running with it. And then the next generation comes and builds off your stuff.
Yeah. Nothing's original
Yeah.
anymore. Everything is built off of past experience and other people's work and then your interpretation of that.
Which we'll get to either in this episode or if we go too long, a separate little bonus Dune episode, we'll get to the inspiration of Star Wars, which is Dune.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Ready to move on to our next category?
Yep.
All right. Next category is set and character design. This is out of 5 points. We like to talk about this in the sense of like their decisions behind like their outfits or the locations of what their ships look like, or what the dunes look like, what the worm looks like. This is that category.
Five.
Anyway, 5. Boom. Easy.
5. This was quite possibly the most stylistically perfect designed movie I have ever watched.
Wow.
I have high standards for that. I don't. So
Have you seen Barbie?
yes, I have. It was good, but this blows Barbie out of the water, mostly because I'm a sci-fi nerd. But okay, you take a feudalistic spacefaring society that has married between super advanced technology and very ancient traditions. Everything on screen perfectly reflected it at all times. One thing I wrote in my notes was the Emperor's throne room on his battleship. That set piece is such the most beautiful stage I have ever seen. Because if you look at how the lighting works, it went up the stairs and the Emperor is bathed in this light as he leans forward in his regal gowns. Everything designed on that stage was perfect. And it took the Harkonnens, who are these despicable characters, these big heavies, and it made them look so pathetic and groveling and wormy like they really were. The set was what sold that image to the point where it made them, it exposed them for what they were. Their characters were exposed as the wormy scum that they really are. And the Emperor is really just sitting there in judgment of them, and it's the end for them. That's the ending for the Harkonnens. All three of them, die quickly. And spoilers. So, but that set is so perfect. And then as it changes through the sequence, when the attack happens, everything about that scene, there are so many scenes I could pick that are just as good. But that one I use as an example to talk about just how perfect the design is. The costumes, everything, the lighting, the set design, how people were staged on the stage, and the angles of the cameras, that there was no bad angle in that room. Everything was perfect. I could not have given this movie a 6 out of 5 if I could. It's so good. Like, I get excited thinking about how they designed this thing. I wish I could have been on that set to see it in real life. Well, it was so good.
I agree. I feel like whenever I look at the scenes in this movie, I just think how did they get this done in any reasonable amount of time? It seems like a 30-year achievement, Like you're cutting from the Harkonnen battle room where they've got that computer system mapping out Arrakis, and there's so much depth and so much included in that scene, and then cutting to the Sietches underground with all its rocks and all these people living in this little society, and then cutting to where Princess Irulan and the Emperor are with they were filming in Rome with all these bright colors and greenery and a mansion, and it's how did you guys build some of these sets? It's super creative, but it's also just seems so time consuming, and it seems impossible.
I think that's the thing. They did build all of these sets, and that's what really helps sell the grand scale of this movie. We just did an episode on the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender and how it felt encased, enclosed a little bit,
which won't come out till later.
It's the volume shooting.
Yeah.
They're shooting on a volume.
Yeah.
Limited.
So there's something to actually shooting on a big set, and that gets the best reaction from your actors and actresses too. I gave the set and character design a 4.5 out of 5.
You're just so determined not to give a full score in any of the categories.
What did you give? What was it?
5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Nice. That's all I have to say. I don't have anything else to add to what you guys have already said. I mean, it was phenomenal.
What was your guys? Well, we didn't talk about costume design though. What was your guys' favorite costume in the movie?
The Bene Gesserit.
Oh, the actress that you like.
That was so good.
You sound like you're eating a delicious pie.
You're like a good pizza.
I also
here. It was good.
I also like Lady Jessica. Her outfit's really cool, with
the markers on her
and
face
stuff.
too.
Yeah, and
She looked really cool.
she did look really
And
cool.
with the bright blue eyes after she drank the water of life. My personal favorite was my dog Florence Pugh in her. She's looked like Joan of Arc inspired outfit,
With the jewels.
Yeah. It was almost like chainmail, I guess, but not quite. It was more larger textured.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was one of the most stunning costumes in the movie, and it really every time they cut to her, I was like, wow, her outfit looks
Very
so cool.
unique.
And she's pulling it off, she's selling it so well.
All right, let's head to our last category, and that is rewatchability. This is out of 5 points, and the way we like to phrase this is if you weren't doing anything and someone on 5 different occasions asked you to rewatch Dune Part 2, how many times would you say yes out of 5? Dan?
5 out of 5. I would watch it every time somebody said, "Hey, let's watch it. I want your thoughts on it." I would be eager to tell them my thoughts on this movie. I'd be like, "I can't wait to see your reaction if you've never
Yeah.
seen it. I want to
Yeah.
watch it again through them."
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I said that the other day too because my fiance Sierra was so excited about this movie. She went ahead and literally purchased tickets for family members and said, "You're going to see this." And I was like, "Man, I would love to." I had to work that day. I was like, "I'd love to be there to like kind of experience the movie again through your eyes because you haven't seen it." And I'm hyped to go see it again now, but I did give it overall a 3.5 out of 5 because like it's very long. And I feel like there are some beats upon rewatch that will feel even longer. I feel like it's
Desert scenes.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I think it you feel that. I don't think it's like a movie that was like, wow, that felt like an hour and a half. I whipped through that movie. I could watch it again and again and again. I think it's such a well-made movie, and everything in it I feel like is necessary. I just feel like to rewatch it, it takes a little bit of energy out of me to watch a movie that long with some slower paced scenes of dialogue.
Okay, let's put it this way. If they said, "Let's watch it after the point where they cross to the southern hemisphere,"
And 5 out of 5 at
5
that
out of
point.
5, yeah.
I mean, it's not like I would be excited just that somebody was like, "Do you want to watch Dune 2?" I'd be excited, but sometimes I'd be like, "It feels a little long."
I gave it a 3 out of 5, and I feel like it's kind of grown since I've seen it. Like the more that I've looked into
Originally,
it,
it
the
was
more,
a 1.
yeah, I wasn't super excited after seeing it.
He was bumming me
It
out.
had to like really marinate, and the more I did research on the film, and the more we're talking about it, makes me want to watch it
I
again.
was just showing him that I wrote in my notes 3 out of 5, but as we were talking about it, I got so excited. I'm like,
grown.
Okay,
it's
yeah.
really growing on me.
Nice.
Like, I got to see it again.
Letting the hype carry you into higher scores, Dan.
There's scenes that I will probably search and rewatch those scenes. Certainly.
Yeah.
You know.
But those scenes are good because of what leads up to it.
That's
We
true.
talked about beginning about Dune, the first one, back in 2022.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 years ago. So I remember, like, that movie informs so much of what happens here.
Wasn't 21?
I'm looking now.
Was it?
He said Aaron said yes.
I think
with the
I
certainty,
think
but
it
thought
was the
21.
2022 Oscars.
That's what
that
it was.
I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
So
it's
I think it was 21.
Okay.
Because Denis took a little break,
Yeah.
which deserved.
So anyway, I think a lot of it has to do with the lead up to those scenes is what makes them so good.
Sure.
Like the Hoth Walker scene in
Dune Part 3, Star Wars.
Yeah. And Empire Strikes Back. Thank you. So I know Star Wars, I swear. What makes that scene so good is not the battle itself, but the short scenes before where they're prepping. It sells it. And then the thumping sound of the feet. So all these scenes that we really enjoyed in the movie we enjoyed them largely because of the preamble that came before.
They built the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we ready for our final scores?
Yeah. Total scores out of 10. What did yours come out to, Andrew? A 12 out of 10?
It came out to a whopping 9.5, which I think is
9.5.
like the second highest score I've ever given.
Is it only the second? I feel like that's the first for you.
No, I think The Dark Knight was a 9.6.
Okay. Dang. Dan, do you have your total? I know you
Despite the 7,
changed.
There's a 7 there. So I had to give it I think it's 9 out of 10. Just because of but there's so many 10s involved.
Yeah.
Again, the acting I think could have been superior in some cases. Some of the cast, and I'm not going to say who, are not actually like actors. That's not how they started their career. And I don't want
Subtweeting Dave Bautista right now. I'll say who you're saying.
I won't say, and there were others too. And while I don't want to be cruel because I admire the work they did.
There were others. You said tweeting Zendaya? Bro, you better change that tune before Challengers comes out right now. Challengers.
I am more of a Florence Pugh kind of guy myself. But anyway, so
Dude, I'm telling you, I
just said
I'm telling you,
it's erased in man's mind.
avenge yourself. When he dissed Zendaya Chani for Florence Pugh, I leaned over to my fiance and I was like, I would do the same thing.
I see Zendaya is good, but you can tell. And oh God,
I think she's very talented.
She's talented. She's very gifted.
I'm gonna let you dig your hole though.
I am digging my hole, aren't I?
Old white man,
So,
you.
oh yeah, right. The old cranky white guy who happens to like blacks and Latinas. I just want to say, I like the ladies of.
This is gonna turn into your Tinder profile.
Yeah, right. Hey, you know. So anyway, I will say people of color, women of color, I like. But anyway, that sounds so bad. Please edit that out. Anyway, so I will say this, like. That being said, when she's up against your boy Timothée Chalamet, her acting, she is kind of dwarfed by him in their scenes.
I feel that for me, not so much in the between the two of them, but in the scenes where Robin, Dave Bautista, is with Faye Doratha, Austin Butler. I feel like there's a little bit of a gap there, which is no diss to Dave Bautista, because I think he's done a great job, especially transitioning over from wrestling. But I think you can feel there that like Austin Butler is a bigger presence and very astonishingly talented.
I do think part of that, though, is the framing of the characters themselves. Because one character is superior than the other.
I think part of it to me is the voice, because Austin Butler does not seem like Austin Butler. Dave Bautista seems a little bit more reminiscent of Dave Bautista with makeup on. But Dave Bautista is still doing a great job. A great job. And I think that, like I said...
Sounds like you have a lot of critiques for a 10 out of 10 acting performance there, Andrew.
I'm not going to dock them a whole point because of... And I still said Dave Bautista's doing a great job. But I'm not going to dock them. I'm not going to dock them the whole point because an actor outshined another actor in one scene.
I don't think I gave.
It's like more of a compliment to Austin Butler in my eyes than an insult to Dave Bautista.
Oh, he did
great. Yeah.
Austin Butler did great. Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite parts of the whole film. My total score of the average of all of our categories came out to an 8.1 out of 10. And again, I think there's room for it to grow on me if I can get it and see it a few more times.
Bit of trivia, by the way. Do you know who played the original Fade in?
I do.
1984?
Do you?
No.
I beat Arron then. Sting.
Weirdest choice of casting ever.
Yeah.
He was cut up though. He had abs
jacked.
for days.
Yeah.
Austin Butler was super jacked in his one shirtless scene in this movie.
Yeah.
He was super cut.
Yeah. So that was an interesting little trivia. I was like, I wonder who they get to play, because I didn't look at any of the cast or anything before the movie. I didn't want to be prejudiced.
Sure.
I went into it with just like,
Yeah.
Prejudiced like you are against Zendaya.
I'm not prejudiced against Zendaya. Listen here, I will not be drawn into that.
So we have a couple of extra fun segments here for after the end of unveiling, which we've all unveiled our ratings now, right?
Yep.
And do you guys want to dive into those? Are we too far on time? What do you think? Bonus episode?
So right now we're sitting at an hour and 40 minutes. So
We got 20 extra minutes.
Yeah.
I think. Why not?
I mean, why not just make it as long as the movie?
2 hours.
there we go. All right, you heard it here first.
We're
gonna.
But before you leave, just hit subscribe. Okay, do us a favor, hit subscribe. And then for those who are still watching, thank you so much. I at least want to hear the comparisons to Star Wars. What are you feeling?
Okay. I'm trying to, before we do the comparisons to Star Wars, I forgot. I took my fiance's ratings for this movie, Sierra.
Oh, okay.
She loved this movie. I wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of her ratings. She rated the story a 10 out of 10, the acting a 10 out of 10. Originally, she said the cinematography was 11 out of 10, but then she changed it to 100. And then she gave the sound design 10 out of 10. And then set and character design, 10 out of 5. Rewatchability, 10 out of 5.
So she's saying that this is her absolute favorite movie of all time.
I said this very second, maybe, but I feel like
More than Barbie, more than any other movie.
more than Pitch Perfect,
More than any
Pitch
other
Perfect and
movie.
Twilight are really her favorite movies. So I think that averages out to like
A 10 out of 10.
100 out of 10, like a 90 out of 10. But yeah, those are her ratings.
That's hilarious.
So this next segment that we have here is Dune versus Star Wars. You'll hear a lot of people drawing comparisons nowadays because Dune just came out and Star Wars has been out since like 1977. But the novel for Dune that originated this story came out in 1965, a whole 12 years before the first Star Wars movie aired in theaters. So really the first story and details to come out are from Frank Herbert's Dune, the novel. So we're going to talk about some of the comparisons people are drawing. Some people even saying Star Wars was copied by Dune. But keep in mind, Dune came first. So one of the main comparisons that we already touched on that Dan mentioned was that Tatooine and Arrakis are both desert planets where the stories of A New Hope and Dune primarily take place. And then within Arrakis, you've got the young Paul Atreides, who is, in some ways similar. He's the chosen one, like Luke Skywalker and Anakin were the chosen one in the stories that came thereafter. You've got the Fremen in Dune, and in Star Wars, you could either pick the Jawas or the Tusken Raiders. They both are like hooded figures on desert planets, hiding their bodies and faces from the sun. I don't think that what is Anakin's home planet from A Phantom Menace? Is that also Tatooine?
Yeah.
So then they're both on Tatooine. And then you've got the Bene Gesserit and the Jedi. So the Jedi were actually originally called the Jedi Bendu, and the Bene Gesserit have a training technique that's called, I think, Prana Bendu. So they took the Bendu out. They were like, maybe that's a little too obvious. And then another comparison that I saw that I haven't seen a whole lot of people saying is the Chris knife and the lightsaber. I mean, they're both essentially swords, although the lightsaber is
Way cooler.
arguably an improvement. But they both have spiritual significance, right? Like the Chris knife is from the tooth of the Shai Hulud that they hold in high regard, and the lightsaber is only used by Jedis and used with a kyber crystal, which also has spiritual significance to the Jedi. You can even like do the ceremony that they do at Disney now in their Star Wars section. Both planets of Arrakis and Tatooine have moisture farming, essentially. They farm the moisture from people in Arrakis in the film.
And they also have the moisture farm, the evaporators.
Yes.
In the movie, you see her helping him with it. Yeah.
Also, George Lucas named the substance spice in Star Wars,
Yeah.
which is like the primary point of contention in Dune is the spice. And there's an old mining ship that the Jawas ride around in that looks very similar to like the sand crawler.
It's
in
even
Dune.
called a sand crawler. The Jawa sand.
Oh, maybe I'm getting mixed up, and it's a harvest. The teams that go out are harvesters in Dune, but the ship might be called something else.
Okay.
And it's the Sandcrawler in Star Wars. That's how confusing these two movies are for their similarities.
Similar. Yep.
There's the super obvious one, I think, the Sandworm and the Sarlacc. The Sarlacc is in the pit in Return of the Jedi, which is basically just the Sandworm.
Yep.
You've got the question of the hero turning to the dark side or not in both stories, really. There's not quite a dark side in Dune, but they changed, obviously, Luke Skywalker's Jedi robes to black in Return of the Jedi to kind of convince audiences in the trailer that he might be turning to the dark side. And that's obviously a big point of contention in Dune, is whether or not he's on the good side or the bad. Emperor, and this one now is real obvious. Emperor. There's an evil overlord emperor in both stories that's like controlling things, and the villain in both stories. And then you've got Princess Alia, which is the sister of the main character in Dune, and you've got Princess Leia, which is the sister of the main character in Star Wars.
They just rearranged the letters too.
And then another big one, we've already spoiled, if you're here, I'm sure you've watched Dune Part 2. But spoilers for both Dune Part 2 and Empire Strikes Back.
Good job.
I made sure to mention it early on.
Spoilers.
You've got Darth Vader with Luke, I am your father.
What?
And you've got surprise Baron Harkonnen with Paul, I am your grandfather, which he doesn't say in the movie, but you've got the surprise family twist, the lineage in both stories.
I love that scene where he killed him and goes,
"Hello, grandfather."
And you saw the look.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then you've got the Force versus the Voice, both in ways of controlling outside objects. And the Force actually, it's not just physical. Obviously, the Force, these are not the droids you're looking for. You can also manipulate minds with the Force, just like the Voice. So
it also gives them prescience. So the spice enables somebody to see into the future. So the Force does a similar thing.
Yeah, where they can anticipate attacks, and that's why these fights are so impressive between the Jedi. If you can anticipate your opponent's next move. Yeah, I think that's all the comparisons I have, but that's a lot. It's hard to, and the big thing is that George Lucas never gave credit to Frank Herbert for Dune. There's a famous quote from Frank Herbert when Star Wars aired. He said, "I will try very hard not to sue," because there's so many similarities, and there are other things that George Lucas openly stated were inspirations, but he did not name Dune, which it seems like there's just so much for it to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
If you told me George Lucas had never read Dune, I would be shocked.
Yeah. I don't know.
A lot of the themes of Dune and Star Wars are kind of the same too. Morality,
Yeah.
Messiah,
Destiny,
chosen one.
destiny and the path.
religion,
Bringing
a lot
balance.
of spirituality. Yeah.
It's eerily similar, to say the least. I've got my other section here on differences from the book to the movie, which I know more than I writ down, so I'd have to see what I remember.
Would be very
Okay.
interested in this, actually.
So
And I guess I don't think we've mentioned at all that part 1 and part 2 is book.
book one.
Yeah. So the movie
dense.
split this book into 2. I think some people were a little confused that they thought book 1 was part 1 and then that this is the second book. But really it was all into this, and then Messiah is the second
I
book.
thought that before I watched it too.
Yeah.
So some differences between Dune the movie and Dune the book. So I think one of the most interesting, captivating, and strange changes that they made is that there's this big plot point in the book where Princess Alia is born, and in the book they do a time skip, right? So they skip ahead to Alia being 3-4 years old. She's a kid, but because her mother drank the water of life when she was pregnant, Alia is also a reverend mother. She also inherited all the memories of the past reverend mothers. So like even in the womb, like she is in this movie, or as a baby, a young child, she has like the constitution and knowledge of all these people in her. And if you have all that knowledge in your mind, you're basically an adult in a child's body. So like she's raised as a Fremen, she's raised to be a Fedaykin in a warrior culture, and she's like a bloodlusted, bloodthirsty 4-year-old, which I think maybe they thought was too much for screens and potentially a positive change. But the big scene in this movie where Paul confronts Baron Harkonnen as he's laying on the ground, says hello grandfather, and stabs him in the neck, in the book that is Alia Atreides. She confronts her grandfather, kills him, and then like is excitedly gleeful about murder, basically about killing him. And the leader of the Bene Gesserit women, she calls her an abomination. Like when she first sees her, she says like, kill that child. She's an abomination. So calling Paul an abomination in this movie was like a nod to her frequently being called an abomination in the book. And she's considered an abomination because of the mother drinking the water of life with her still in the womb. But she like, there's a point in the book, I guess, where Lady Jessica says to Paul, like, where's your sister? And he's like, she's a Fremen child. She's out there finishing off the wounded Harkonnens. Like she's just running around the battlefield, finishing like people, like putting them out of their misery. It's
Just running with her arms behind her and a blade in her hand, just slicing.
Laughing and cackling the whole time.
I think I would have liked it if that was in there. I know a lot of people probably would have been, kind of turned off by that.
They did
Time
that.
for character development in the movie.
They did that in the original movie. They
They,
showed.
did they do the whole book in one movie?
Yes. So that's why the movie is so rushed too.
Yeah.
And it's just
How'd they fit this all in?
Oh my God! They skipped huge sections, but they did make her more closer to the book in that department. The newer movies follow the books more closely in certain areas.
Where they choose to.
And the old movie, I had forgotten about that, but yeah, in the old movie, you see her; she's a 4-year-old girl, and she
Murders.
Is
that crazy?
Not crazy over the top. They can only show so much in a movie, but
Yeah. Can't have Anna Taylor-Joy
As a 4-year-old.
as a 4-year-old.
They also let me get my train of thought. In the book, another big change is that Paul is an unmatched swordsman and warrior. So like the fight with Jamis would have been over instantly. He fights Feyd-Rautha in the book and makes easy work of him and just finishes him off. But changing this in the movie definitely makes it a lot more exciting. Like you got this long drawn out battle sequence, which I said to you outside the theater I felt like the movie was missing like a long fight, like in a long emotional
personal
fight with depth, personal fight. And then like as I was thinking that, like less than 10 minutes later, that scene came up and I was like cinched it. Like they gave me exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I think that making Baron Feyd-Rautha more imposing and making that fight more intense where he actually gets wounded, stabbed, and almost killed, and you almost think he might die, makes it a much, much better scene in the movie. What else am I missing from changes to book the movie? So the Harkonnens, they're not bald and pale like they are. They're redheaded, which
Still pale.
As a redhead, I'm offended by our removal from the. No, honestly, redheads get removed a lot, but it's fine. It's whatever. I think it's improvement. It is an improvement. They look a lot. It looks
I just had this mental image of Batista with red toupee, just like this little red toupee on his head. Would have been great.
That's funny.
I think it's a lot better this way. They look a lot more cool and intimidating, as opposed to Dune 1984, where they use redheaded ginger characters. I can say that.
Yeah, I could never be scared of a ginger. I mean, not very scary.
Just I know where you sleep.
Oh,
So what are the other big changes? Oh, Chani is a huge change. So in the books, Chani is who's Zendaya's character in the movie. She is a high priestess. She's not a Fedaykin. So although she's like imposing in battle and she does fight some battles on Paul's behalf, she's primarily like a high priestess, a religious figure. She's really close with Lady Jessica by the end of the story. They're not enemies, they're friends. And she's like a devout companion and follower of Paul as well. She's not like this opposing force to him like she is in the movie, which I think makes her a lot more interesting in the movie and adds like this layer of conflict to the movie where people within the Fremen culture are against him, not just like the opposing forces far away on the outside with the Harkonnens and the Emperor. Like she's opposing him at the end of the movie, and it'll be an exciting arc for the third movie too. He also said he foresaw her like coming around, I think, in this movie. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes about. But
it also, going on what you just said, it also sells the thing about the difference between the elite and the common people, I guess. Because if she was a high priestess, she would be on par with the princess at the end. But instead, you get this huge dichotomy, this huge separation of social status.
And also between Lady Jessica too, because she specifically said like we're going to go about this by manipulating the low class and the weak. And Zendaya is a Fedaykin. She's a warrior. She's not like she's not a high priestess up on her pedestal. She's on the ground fighting. So like that also creates that dichotomy between those characters. I
think it's a lot more dynamic as a character dynamic between the two.
Yeah, and she also in the book has Paul's child, which they name Leto II. So they have a child who, through the time skip, eventually dies. I think he's a baby when he dies. Like the Harkonnens destroy a siege and he dies or something like that. And so in the end, when in the book, when Paul decides to go and do this like faux marriage to Lady Irulan, he tells her like, "You'll like have my hand in marriage, but I will never touch you. I'll marry." He said, "Chani will bear my children, and she will be like she'll bear my heir."
And that was
my baby mama.
1984 movie.
So he foresees them having more children. I think one of the big things in the movie too that is kind of included but not shown to a high degree. I don't think a lot of people would have gotten this. I definitely didn't. But through Paul's ability to see alternate futures and alternate paths, basically, he actually in the books has kind of this relationship with Jamis, who he kills at the end of the first movie. So in Fremen culture, when you defeat somebody in battle, you take over everything from their life, like everything that they owned, all their possessions, and even their family. So Paul has the opportunity to take Jamis's wife and his children, and Jamis has one child that is biologically related to him, and another child that he took from somebody else from defeating them in battle. So in the book, Paul refuses his wife, but still takes his children under his wing and becomes like a father to these children. And also in the book, he takes a necklace that holds Jamis's water, so Jamis is always with him. And in alternate futures that he sees a path where he didn't kill Jamis and basically like has these memories that never happened, where Jamis is the one who trains him instead of Chani teaching him the Fremen ways. He learns a lot from Jamis himself and has like this. So we see small cutscenes in the first and second movie where he's like calmly talking to Jamis and like his visions. But in the book, these are explained as like alternate realities where Jamis lived and they like became close. And so like these alternate futures he sees are actually tools to him. So that's why he's able to learn the Fremen ways so quickly. You know, they say the prophecy, he will know our ways as if they were his own. That's why he's able to learn the language so quickly, learn their culture and their fighting so quickly, because Jamis has taught it to him in another lifetime, in another reality. I mean, I think that's pretty cool.
There's so much that happens in this book.
Yeah, he becomes a father.
What in the world?
He becomes a father to Jamis's children.
You did your homework. Dude.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Like, well, I didn't know half this stuff. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah,
I need to do more research on this book.
Yeah.
I kind of want to read it now, like learning about the difference.
You didn't read the
movie.
You know all this stuff.
Oh,
You didn't even
yeah.
It's right here.
Yeah, no, I didn't read it. I will. I want to. But I don't know. My fiance doesn't have a lot of faith in me. She says I don't have the attention span for a fantasy novel.
It's a heavy book. It's heavy. I've gotten
So I've
most of
heard.
the way through, but I had to do it in like chunks. Yeah.
But isn't that crazy? The stuff with
Yeah.
Jamis was some of the most interesting to me. I thought that the Princess Alia stuff was really cool as well.
Very cool. You know a lot about this world.
Yeah.
I feel like you should read the book.
I researched it pretty hardcore. I wonder if there's anything else I missed. I mean, the time jumps are a pretty big thing that they left out. Like they're like years of time jumps, whereas doesn't seem nearly that long in this movie.
The Spacers Guild, they didn't really touch in the movie that much, which is in the book more heavily.
They didn't show like those guide people, right? Like there's people in the ships that they need to like foresee so that they don't crash into rocks and asteroids.
And the spice is what powers that. So maybe in the third movie, they're going to highlight the galactic scale more because they really focused on the struggle over Dune and the effect on the Fremen itself. Whereas maybe in the third movie, they're going to focus a lot on, well, there's a bigger
universe.
Yeah, the universe needs it too because this is going to destroy space travel if they stop.
In the books, they use the spice to have that foresight, and the scene where Paul has Gurney tell the different houses that he's going to blow up the spice fields, he says, "Have your guides look to see if I'm serious." And they look ahead and they're like, "Yeah, he means it. He means business. He's going to destroy the spice fields." And then in the book, they immediately crown him emperor right there. Basically, they acknowledge him as emperor instead of denying it like they do in the movie to set up the Holy War. There's a lot to do in the book. Like there's too much.
They didn't really highlight a lot. They could have leaned on it a little more. Maybe they're holding it off for the third movie. That's the only thing I can think of. That about spice is what's necessary for space travel.
Well, there's just so much already in this movie. It was talked about a little bit more in the first part one.
There's so much stuff in the book that's not included though. I mean, Duncan Idaho is considered like the fiercest warrior in the entire galaxy, and even he says that Paul is like stronger than him. So Duncan's the one who trains Paul in the books. And then Nabarian, Feyd-Rautha, and Baron Harkonnen are trying to kill each other throughout the story in the books. Like he tries to poison the Baron. They're going back and forth trying to kill each other. There's too much to include in this dense book into a movie.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and it definitely deserves a rewatch.
Definitely.
So I don't know when that'll be, but I definitely want to see it again.
I need to see it in theater one more time, at least. I
Yeah.
have to see, because when are you going to get that kind of experience? It's just, it's designed to be watched on a big screen,
Big speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a group of people.
With a group who have not seen it yet. So
Yeah,
they can
exactly.
experience it for the first time again.
Well, this is creeping up to be one of our longest episodes.
Oh my goodness.
We're at 2 hours flat right now. And for everyone who's listening, I want to say thank you so much for sticking around this long and just listening to us.
There's that one guy.
Yeah.
He's holding on. He's like, I can't wait for more.
Right.
Completionist.
I will watch
Once
all
I
of them.
start, I have to finish.
He's shoveling popcorn in his mouth.
But yeah, thank you so much, Dan, for coming on the show and contributing to this
I feel like
conversation.
I didn't contribute nearly as much. I should have done more research.
No.
This
I'm so glad that you were here. It's great to have your perspective. Ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew does a really good job at
I see
diving
that.
into these
Here's what I do.
topics.
I do a good job at pretending like I know about stuff that I don't know about.
I see your notes. You knew the names better than I can't bring them up as fast.
I can't pronounce them, let alone
I've also been
remember them all.
making TikToks about this stuff. So I've been like, I've been Googling a lot about Dune.
Yeah.
The one where you're like, as he's worshiping.
As written.
Yeah, I made a TikTok where it was talking about Stilgar worshiping Paul, and I said me worshiping Stilgar as he worships Paul, and somebody commented and said as written, and I was like,
Yes.
yes.
All right. I think we should wrap up this episode. Thanks again. We post new full episodes every Monday and Thursday. And make sure you hit that bell because sometimes we put out other content like our short film that small little plug here got accepted into its first film festival, the Sunscreen Film Festival in St. Pete. We're very excited to go there. And we appreciate everyone who has seen it. And if you haven't, it's in the link to this episode.
Description.
Yeah,
The link is in the description.
In the description. Thank you. Like Andrew's talking about, he's made a bunch of TikToks on Dune. Be sure to comment if you have any questions about the movie in the comments, and Andrew will be happy to answer them because he knows everything about this universe.
I know more about Dune than people who've read Dune.
I would say, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
No, you do. I read. I know more.
All right, any closing thoughts?
No, I really appreciate you guys for listening. Like Arron said, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much again for coming on and joining us, Dan. Make sure to check Dan out on his social media pages.
www.danbrowncgi.com, and Instagram is danbrowncgart.
Let us know what we got wrong about Dune. I'm sure you guys would have done it without me asking. And that's a wrap.